The second largest telco in Australia experienced a serious data breach, exposing the personal data of millions of past and present customers as a result of a recent cyber attack. Details about the specifics of the attack are still under investigation. The speculation amongst cybersecurity professionals is that the attack was caused due to a vulnerable application programming interface, better known as an API. What we can confirm is that over 11.2 million customer records, including names, mailing addresses, email addresses, date of births, and in some cases, license or passport numbers were exposed. Optus confirmed that at least 2.1 million personal identification numbers have been compromised. Additionally, this breach is by far the largest cyber breach in Australian history in terms of the level and the fidelity of the information that was compromised. Breaches like this have flow-on effects for years to come, and we haven't even felt the full brunt of it yet. Which raises the question, what can we do as an industry to support each other during this time?
Joining me today is Sean Duca from Palo Alto Networks. Sean, it's wonderful to get you back on the show to hear your wonderful insights.
Thank you.
And Wayne Williamson from Equifax Australia. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me.
So we obviously know what's happening with Optus. You both have been across what's been happening. So I really want to have this discussion about setting it up for maybe more positive. We don't obviously want to put the boot in. We have a level of empathy in your position, Sean, and also your position too, Wayne. So I want to start with, what can we do as an industry to help support what's happening? I'm going to go to you first, Sean.
Look, I think the first thing is no one is immune to these types of threats, and in cyber incidents from actually sort of targeting their own organisation. I think it's inevitable that you are a connected organisation and someone's going to be knocking on your door at some point in time. So every organisation probably should start thinking about how would you respond? Mm-hmm. And that becomes that level of sort of being prepared, making sure that there is the right level of, the right team in place to actually respond in the event that something does happen or when it happens. But then at the same time, how would you respond and how would you deal with it as well? Look at the last 12 months worth of cyber incidents that have actually taken place, whether it be locally in Australia or globally, and work out how could we actually have done something differently in our own organisation. Mm-hmm. What are the questions the board of directors should start asking, and asking the executive leadership team, but also what should the executive leadership team actually start to do inside their own organisation? Is there a couple of levers they could actually pull and learn from some of these things?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Wayne, what are your thoughts?
I totally agree with Sean, and probably Sean stole my thoughts in that one as well. But if I was going to add to that, I think there's an element that we can provide as within our profession around transparency, and that is security isn't a trade secret anymore. We're all going through, as Sean sort of alluded to there, the same issues, the same problems, but we all sort of keep it in the four walls of our own sort of world and that as well. Getting out and sharing this information helps organisations become more resilient, helps us understand we're not alone, we've all got these issues, how do we apply and what does it look like? And then feeding things through, like where Sean mentioned around the board, how do we educate up to the board and those board members disperse and go to other organisations and ask those same sort of questions and those sorts of things. So it gives us the opportunity to be more transparent in the view of, this is what's happening, this is where we need to focus on, take those learnings out into the community, but then feed it back through and make sure that we're also testing and being that resilient sort of organisation.
Yeah, I think ambiguity is something that people need to be comfortable with.
Right.
When you think about any breach, and take the example of all the ones we've sort of seen the last couple of months now, there is a level of ambiguity that you will always have, and sometimes you're never going to have the information. But I think the best way that you could probably try and handle the approach of, if you were to sort of report that an unfortunate incident has actually taken place, okay, you don't have all the information. Let the data tell the story when the data actually comes available. And I think that's the part that every organisation needs to be comfortable with, because sometimes there's going to be people that are asking and pushing for a lot more information. If you don't know, you don't know.
So can I just ask, as we sort of know, it's pretty brutal out there. There's people saying things online. It's very easy, again, as we spoke about before we jumped on set today, is to coach from the couch. Yep. We often see this in cyber. So what are your sort of thoughts around that?
Look, I think victim shaming doesn't help anyone. And if I think about it even sort of one step further, all it's going to do is force people to go into the shadows and try and hide things and not come forward and talk about it. And to the point that Wayne mentioned, we want to learn from this. And the more we keep on sort of making people out like the victim is the one that's in trouble here, the victim is the one to be blamed for all of this, all it's going to do is force people to actually not learn from each other. Because what happens to one organisation, the same thing can happen to the next and next and next. And we're making it easier and it's placed in the hand of the adversary. The more we actually force them to go into the shadows, the more the attacker can actually just rinse and repeat the same attack over and over again. And when you have yet another incident that is exactly the same as the last one.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
No, I totally agree. It's without that visibility, without that transparency, totally agree with that viewpoint. It's very easy to hide because of the public shame that can happen, the reputation that the organisation is already dealing and battling with. And look, these armchair people just need to stop. It's that.
Where do you think it stems from, though? Do you think it's just, is it more about pushing a product, pushing a service to say, hey, I'm better than you? Where does it stem from, though?
I think it just stems from an easy way to get yourself publicity in a viewpoint which, I think Sean said it, you just don't have all the data for. The organisations are going through, they're learning, they're understanding, they want to understand the full impact and do the right thing.
Right.
And these sorts of things just take that away. And it's just too easy for people to have, I think it's the saying around hindsight, right? So you have that after the event and you can pretty much say anything. But during and before, it's a different sort of battlefield that you're dealing with. And these individuals, whether they're selling a product or looking to sell a product or trying to make a name and brand for themselves personally, they wouldn't have the full information. Or that's not readily available to make those comments.
The organisation doesn't even have the full information either. So, what are you kind of expecting? If you think about an attacker is sometimes laying and waiting inside an organisation for, up to 90 days. It may take 90 days to actually complete the incident response and work out what was the root cause. How did someone actually go in from A to B and start to do lateral movement and the like? We have to learn from this, and we're not going to know the information the day one.
Correct.
Absolutely, and I think that, again, would you say that you've both been in the industry longer than I've been in? Do you think people are getting worse, though, in terms of their commentary around, like, oh, they should have done this, or we know what's going on? You're right, like, they're not in the organisation, they don't have all the facts, and yet human beings seem to make these accusations about what they think they know. So do you think it's getting worse, or do you think people are sort of, bounding together and trying to generate camaraderie in the space?
I think it probably is getting worse, and I think there's probably a couple of levels on that one. One, I think we're seeing more cyber incidents being reported.
Right.
Because if you go back, let's say 10 years, not to say that a cyber incident never took place, we probably just never knew about it. Whereas now I think every single time something's happening, it's actually being reported. So it looks like it's happening a lot more. I think in terms of the level of activity, what's there, I'd probably say that's the same, sometimes probably even getting worse. We're talking about organisations that have either organically grown and they are complex, or they've grown through acquisitions and mergers and the like, and all of a sudden there's complexity that comes out of that one. Trying to work out how half these systems are actually interconnected is a challenge.
Right.
And I'm not trying to sort of downplay the fact that, people shouldn't, it's okay, let's actually sort of let them sort of slide or whatever, but you've got to understand your own information. What is it that you're holding? How you're protecting it? So there is complexity there, but some people just think it's easy just to turn around and go like, I can't believe they didn't know this. It's like, some people don't even know anything.
True. Do you have any thoughts on that, Wayne?
The only thing I would add to that is platforms available these days make it easier.
So like social media and everyone's got an opinion now. Right.
And then it's within those circles as well, right? If you're a known entity within that circle, some people might be hesitant on what they say.
Sure.
If there's an unknown aspect, some people want to just go open, I don't know, open tether is the word or phrase, but these platforms enable these things to happen. There's no one really calling it out, rejudging the individuals that make these, because it's, you get into some political arguments then really around what it is. And even for me, the brand that I represent, the organisation that I work for, I may not agree with the comments, but as soon as you go into battle with those commentaries, then you're in a bad position for yourself.
Yep.
So to sort of summarise what we've spoken about today, do you have sort of any advice for people that are perhaps in a similar position or people that are going through this at the moment? I mean, you're a CISO, Wayne, like it's hard. Do you have any sort of, tangible insight you can share with our audience?
Look, it is hard. It's going to be a start and get the messaging right. It's going to be a tone from the top. Everyone needs to get onto the journey of what it is, what has happened. It can happen to anyone. It's now about what is it, what are they doing, the communications that come out when they know about it, making sure that they're right so that everyone can make the decisions that they need to do, especially the consumers that have been impacted at the end of that. And then working towards building the resiliency and fixing it. And ideally getting that towards a transformational state. So what you don't want from these elements is we've patched the server and we're good to go.
Right.
You know, we want to see investment into transformation. It's got to be change. It is, do you have, I think Sean mentioned earlier, do you have the right people? Are you focusing on the right set of kit? Do you know what your assets are and have that visibility to protect it? So it is an investment avenue that they need to kick off. And it just can't, unfortunately, be a response of, oh, we found the issue, we've closed that door.
Sure.
Yep.
And Sean, what are your thoughts?
I think for me, it's just more, be prepared. It's a foreseeable event that you're going to have someone actually knocking on your door and potentially even coming inside your own organisation. No one ever picks their team the day of the game. So actually start to pick your team right now. How do we actually ensure that we've got the right people in place? We've got the right piece of, capability, the right processes. Test it again. Inject ambiguity into all that process the whole time, because every time you do a tabletop exercise or a simulation, there is going to have to be some sort of weird and wonderful thing that happens, because it does happen. And I think the more that people start to create that sort of muscle memory in the event that something's actually happened, we've kind of prepared for this, because the day that something does go wrong, it's probably going to be the hardest and worst day for that organisation, and people will actually run around kind of like the headless chook type of mentality. But if you've actually rehearsed this a couple of times, you're probably going to have a little bit of a better chance to try and work out what's going on. And I think that the other key part is make sure that it's across the entire organisation. It's not just the IT team or the InfoSec team. How does the exec leadership team understand this? What do the board of directors actually do? What's their role? Because you think about the messaging that people take out, whether it be to their customers or to their stakeholders, the market, rehearse that. Sit down and work out who would actually be the person that goes to market to say this. What would it be? And have someone that's sitting there that's outside of that sort of loop and just going, but why, but why, but why, and be comfortable with that one. Because you're never going to be able to sort of work out what the true story is for a long time. Stick to your core narrative and let the story be sold as it is, because that's the best cover story.
Well, thank you, Sean. Thank you, Wayne. That's all we have time for today. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like and subscribe to the show. I'm your host, Karissa Breen.